Congressman, I just have to tell you right out of the box, I can't for the life of me figure out what the administration is thinking. Can you explain why it closed Guantanamo Bay without a plan and what the plan is now?
Well, Frank, first of all, thank you for your leadership in these issues of our national security, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to your listeners. To answer your question directly, it's hard to understand wrong-headed, wrong thinking. The idea of bringing people who have taken a vow to harm our citizens, to destroy our country, to bring them to America, and with the plan and full knowledge that someday some of them will be walking our streets is hard to figure out. I cannot. In fact, I've been speaking with people in Kansas about this very thing, and none of them think this is a good idea. With the knowledge that we have a court system that is not going to have access to all the classified data, that is going to allow our tax dollars to be used to defend these terrorists, not criminals, but terrorists, goes beyond my comprehension. I think they're a product of a series of bad decisions they've made, promises that they feel obligated to keep, and now decisions that are going to place us in jeopardy. Just as unable, I'm lost for words on how to explain this.
Well, your congressional district, your constituents have a special interest in all of this, presumably, because we keep hearing that one of the places that those that will continue to be detained may well be Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and I can imagine that they would find that to be an unappealing proposition, not least because there's doubtless a greater likelihood that the community around Fort Leavenworth becomes a target for these terrorists, those outside of the prison, obviously, those still on the loose, than it would be if there were none of their colleagues incarcerated there.
Yes, Fort Leavenworth is one of the, I think, the potential sites because we have a federal prison there, and I've recently been to that facility just for the purpose of seeing how it would be capable or incapable of handling terrorists of this magnitude. Very clearly, we could not separate them from the general populace in Fort Leavenworth, which creates its own set of problems. In Guantanamo Bay, and I've been there twice now, we isolate the leaders from the regular foot soldiers in this jihad war that they've created. And the reason they do that is because they have a tendency to stir them up, to get them to do things like throw their feces at our troops, to make threats. They've even had incidents where they've stabbed our troops. And by keeping them separate, they have a much better ability to keep a manageable control of these populace of terrorists.
Now, Congressman, let me interrupt you because I want to move to something that, if anything, is even more outrageous than this prospect of moving terrorists, and we're talking to Congressman Todd Tiahrt from Kansas about the Guantanamo Bay relocation initiative of Barack Obama. But even more troubling than moving these terrorists into federal penitentiaries like the one in your state is the prospect that some of them are just going to be turned loose in the United States, something that you've also addressed in recent days involving these Uyghurs, as they call them. What is up with that?
Well, there is a great potential. In fact, the Department of Justice has already announced that and Department of Defense have announced that they think there are 30 that should be released now. In other words, they don't believe they have sufficient evidence in an open court system that would allow us to hold them and keep them off our streets. So by bringing them to the United States, there's only one place to release them. The original thought by setting them up in Guantanamo Bay is that these terrorists would go back to their country of origin or to some other willing recipient, another country. France has offered to take one out of the 240. Saudi Arabia has been willing to take a few of them. But we have a policy that we do not send terrorists back to their country if we know they will be either tortured
right,
or executed. Right. So that limits the opportunities we have. For example, Yemen is known to torture their prisoners, and so we won't send them there. And we have a lot of Yemenis held in Guantanamo Bay. Also, these Uyghurs that you mentioned are Turkish descent Chinese people. They have gone to these training camps, and they want to conduct not only damage to the free world, but they also want to go against the Chinese government. So China
Anybody basically who's an infidel is on the target list, I assume.
That's right, and that includes everybody but the billion Muslims in the world.
Right.
So it's a huge problem, because if you can't release them to China, you can't release them to Yemen, and you don't have enough evidence in open court to hold them, then they end up on the streets of our country right here in the United States of America.
Yeah, and there's some talk, and I have to tell you, I'm taking this personally because I'm based here in the Northern Virginia area, as you know, that one of the places that they're looking at, reportedly, is Alexandria, which is, 15 minutes or so from your place of work and the seat of our government. It just boggles the mind that we're talking about people. To Congressman Todd Tiahrt here on Secure Freedom Radio, we're talking about people who have trained in terrorist camps, who adhere to this Sharia program that is supremacist, that requires the destruction of infidels and all who stand in the way of, the global theocracy. We're talking about taking them out of our prison in Guantanamo Bay and turning them loose in America's capital city region. I mean, this just boggles the mind.
I'd like to remind your listeners that 2 of the 19 terrorists that conducted the assault on America on September 11th, 2001, were from a mosque in Northern Virginia,
right,
within walking distance of where the court system is in Northern Virginia. So if, in fact, they are released to the street, they simply can walk down to a mosque that is known to have housed people who have been involved in attacks against this country.
Yeah,
we're
on notice, right? Let me turn quickly to one other thing that you've taken the lead on, Congressman Todd Tiahrt, and that is the proposition that we're going to add truly insult to injury by putting these guys on the dole. Can you address that preposterous idea?
It's bad enough that we can't stop them from coming to our streets, but the Director of National Intelligence here in America has announced that if we do release them, in fact, let me quote Director Blair. He says, if we are to release them in the United States, we need some sort of assistance for them to start a new life. You just can't put them on the street. So what that means is that when they're put on the street, and 30 of them are right at the edge of being put on the street, they will qualify for government-funded health care. They will qualify for welfare benefits, including cash benefits, and they'll qualify for food stamps. So it's bad enough we're paying for their attorneys today. On top of that, us taxpayers will have to pay for their food, their clothing, their health care, and the
opportunity to go to war with us here in our own country. Congressman, just finally, I'm hearing that members of Congress are being denied information from the FBI and other intelligence services, Homeland Security, about these guys and how dangerous they may be and the threat that they would represent, particularly if they're turned loose in our cities. Is that the case as far as you know? And tell us what you're trying to do about this very quickly, Congressman Todd Tiahrt.
Well, first of all, there is information that the FBI has about these people and the Department of Defense that they're not revealing. You have to ask the right question to get the right answer. They won't deny the response, but they're not coming forward with the dangerous capacity that these people have. I had an amendment in the Appropriations Committee to stop the spending from bringing them to America. It failed on a party line vote, Republicans voting to prevent terrorists from coming to this country, Democrats as a bloc voting to allow them to come to America. I also have a bill filed that will prevent them from receiving welfare benefits if, in fact, we do find them on our streets trying to collect money from us taxpayers.
Tremendously important legislation. I gather that it didn't succeed in committee. Is there any chance that we'll get any further on the floor?
I will be presenting this as an amendment form. We've been told that the Democrats will not allow an open rule on these appropriations bills, which is contrary to history, contrary to what the Republicans did in the 12 years that they were in control. We always allowed,
and contrary to the national interests. Oh, by the way, this is
correct.
This is a scandal from beginning to end. Congressman Todd Tiahrt, thank you for your leadership on it. We're going to have to go at the moment. I hope you will come back to Secure Freedom Radio. It is a vital issue, and your leadership on it is tremendously important. Thank you for all you're doing, and please keep up the good work for all of us.